This training video is for anyone wanting to apply for CITES permits or certificates and find out what additional information you need to provide with your applications. Anyone wanting to know why you need to provide additional information and documentary evidence when you make your CITES applications. Or anyone wanting to know what types of documentary evidence you can provide in support of your CITES applications so your applications can be processed more efficiently. So why documentary evidence? Before we go through what types of documentary evidence you need to provide when you submit your CITES applications, we will briefly explain why we need this information. The CITES Convention is a global convention, and the CITES regulations are the legal instrument used to apply the CITES Convention in the protection of fauna and flora, that is, animals and plants. The CITES regulations set out very clearly that applications for CITES permits or certificates must satisfy the issuing CITES Management Authority that the CITES specimens applied for have not been acquired in contravention of the laws of the state for the protection of fauna and flora. In the UK, these laws of the state are the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, EC Regulations 338/97 and 865/2006, as incorporated in domestic law as retained EU law. When you submit your application to APHA, the CITES team will check that the information and documentary evidence you have provided satisfies the CITES regulations. If the information you provide satisfies the regulations, the CITES team will be able to issue a permit or certificate. If the information you provide does not satisfy the regulations, the CITES team will not be able to issue a permit or certificate and your application will be refused. So as you see, it is very important that you provide the correct type of documentary evidence in support of your applications. The CITES Digital Service will ask you to provide some of the required information when you complete the online application form. But you will also be asked to provide the additional documentary evidence to support the information you have provided on your application form. You can help your application be processed more efficiently by providing the documentary evidence up front and at the same time as you submit your online application, rather than a member of the CITES team having to email you to request the necessary documentary evidence a few days later. You should be aware that all CITES applications are processed on a case-by-case basis. This means you must provide the relevant supporting documentary evidence each time you make a new application. Because of this, we recommend you make sure your personal and business records in relation to CITES applications are kept up to date and well maintained, so providing the correct documentary evidence when you submit your CITES applications becomes second nature. You must be aware that providing documentary evidence with your application does not guarantee APHA will issue a CITES permit or certificate. As we said a few slides ago, the documentary evidence you provide must be relevant to the application you have submitted and it must satisfy the CITES regulations. Not providing the required documentary evidence means your application will be refused, as you have not provided the information the CITES team need to make sure your application satisfies the CITES regulations. So what type of documentary evidence do you need to provide? This depends on the type of CITES permit or certificate you are applying for, as each type of permit or certificate has different criteria to satisfy. In the next few slides in this video, we will go through the types of acceptable documentary evidence you need to provide and why you need to provide them. Firstly, are you applying as an agent on behalf of someone else? In that case, you will need to provide a signed letter of authority from the applicant authorising you to apply for CITES permits and certificates on their behalf. Make sure the letter contains the following: the date, the name and address of the person or company you are acting as an agent for and their signature, your name and address, and a clear statement that you are being given authority to apply for CITES permits and certificates on their behalf. If you are applying for a CITES import permit, you will need to provide a copy of a valid and in-date CITES export permit or re-export permit issued by the country you are importing the CITES specimens from. CITES export and re-export permits can vary in what they look like, depending on which country issues them. However, the document is always recognisable from the CITES logo, which has to appear on all permits issued. If you are applying for a CITES import permit to import live CITES listed animals for the first time, you will also need to complete and submit an accommodation and care questionnaire with your first CITES import application. This is to show that you have the facilities and experience to accommodate and care for live CITES listed animals in accordance with the CITES regulations. You can download a blank questionnaire from the gov.uk website at www.gov.uk/publications/species-application-to-move-from-a-permitted-address. If you are applying for a CITES export permit, you will need to provide documentary evidence to prove you acquired the specimen you are exporting legally in accordance with the CITES regulations. Legal acquisition can include buying a specimen bred in the UK in accordance with the CITES regulations, breeding a specimen in the UK in accordance with the CITES regulations, or being gifted a specimen originating in the UK in accordance with the CITES regulations. Examples of forms of documentary evidence include a copy of an invoice, a receipt, or a statement of acquisition, clearly showing the date of acquisition, a description of the specimen you acquired, and the details of the person or company you acquired the specimen from. If you are exporting Annex A species, you need to provide a valid CITES Article 10 number. The Article 10 number is sufficient if the specimen is UK bred. If it is a non-UK Article 10 certificate, you must provide a copy of the certificate. If you are exporting live zoo animals, you need to provide a specimen report for the specimen being exported and also for the parents. If you are exporting an Annex A specimen that you have been gifted, you need to provide a completed APHA declaration of transfer of an Annex A specimen by way of a gift or unconditional loan form. Forms can be downloaded from the gov.uk website at www.gov.uk/endangered-species-declaration-of-a-gift-or-loan. If you are applying for a CITES re-export permit, you will need to provide documentary evidence to show you acquired the specimen you are re-exporting legally in accordance with the CITES regulations. You will also need to provide documentary evidence to show the specimen was legally imported into the UK in accordance with the CITES regulations. Examples of forms of documentary evidence to prove legal acquisition include a copy of an invoice or receipt clearly showing the date of acquisition a description of the specimen you acquired, and the details of the person or company you acquired the specimen from. If you are re-exporting an item you inherited, you need to provide a statement confirming the date you inherited the item, the person you inherited the item from, and where and when the item was originally acquired. Legal acquisition can also be proved by providing a copy of a CITES Article 10 certificate that was valid for the acquisition of the specimen you are now re-exporting. To prove the specimen you are re-exporting was legally imported into the UK, you need to provide a copy of a customs-endorsed UK CITES import permit, or evidence that the specimen was imported into the UK from the EU before the UK left the EU on the 1st of January 2021. For any instances where the specimen in question was imported into the UK when we were part of the European Union, you would need to provide documentary evidence to prove that the specimen was moved within that time period and that the item in question matches up to the information provided on the application. This information can include an invoice or an internal stock movement document showing the details of the country of export and the UK as the country of import. If you are applying for a CITES Article 10 certificate, you will need to provide documentary evidence to show that you acquired or bred the specimen you are applying for legally in accordance with the CITES regulations. You will need to provide parent Article 10 certificate numbers, if the A10s were UK issued, and full closed ring numbers or microchip numbers for the parents. You will need to provide copies of parent Article 10 certificates if they were issued by other EU countries, and the full closed ring numbers or the microchip numbers for the parents, or a previously issued transaction-specific certificate valid for the sale of the specimen to the current Article 10 applicant. If you were gifted an Annex A specimen and you are now applying for an Article 10 certificate, you will need to provide a completed APHA declaration of transfer of an Annex A specimen by way of a gift or unconditional loan form. These forms can be downloaded at the gov.uk website. To prove legal acquisition, you must also provide an invoice or receipt with the details of a previous Article 10 number. The next few slides will cover the supporting information and documentary evidence you need to provide when making specific types of application. If you watch this video from the beginning, you may be beginning to recognise the types of documentary evidence you must provide. Firstly, if you are making CITES applications of any kind for live birds, you need to provide parent Article 10 certificate numbers, if the Article 10s were UK issued, and the full closed ring numbers or microchip numbers for the parent birds. Copies of the parent Article 10 certificates, if the Article 10s were issued by other EU countries, and the full closed ring numbers or microchip numbers for the parent birds. Or a previously issued transaction-specific certificate valid for the sale of the specimen to the current Article 10 applicant. You must also provide accurate hatch dates. You will also need to submit bird registration applications for Schedule 4 birds at the same time as your Article 10 applications. Registration forms can be downloaded at the gov.uk website at www.gov.uk/government/publications/keeping-wild-birds registration-of-schedule-4-birds. If you're applying for Article 10 certificates for other live birds, such as African grey parrots that you have rehomed, or for birds purchased on transaction-specific certificates, you will need to provide evidence of the origin of the specimen, such as a letter of acquisition pre-uplisting, the transaction-specific certificate number, which allowed the sale and the purchase of the specimen. You will need to provide the date you acquired the specimen, and you will need to provide the name and address of the person who sold you the bird. If you were gifted a live Annex A bird, you will need to provide a completed APHA declaration of transfer of an Annex A specimen by way of a gift or unconditional loan form. These can be downloaded from the gov.uk website. If you are making CITES applications of any kind for antiques and ivory, you need to provide proof of legal acquisition, such as an invoice, a receipt, or a statement of acquisition, which must include the date of acquisition and the name and address of the seller, together with a description of the specimen. You can provide an APHA declaration of gifting and a signed gifting letter if you have been gifted a specimen. This must include the details of the person gifting and your details as the applicant, the date of gifting, and a description of the antique specimen being gifted. You will need to provide the previous Article 10 number if that is applicable. When you make applications for antiques and ivory, you must provide clear colour photographs of the specimen as a whole, showing any identifying details, such as a serial number or a maker's mark. You must also provide confirmation of the circa date of the item and an explanation of how the circa date was arrived at, including proof of the circa date, such as an auction lot sheet, an invoice from an auctioneer's with a circa date on it, or an expert statement. If you are making an application to deal in ivory, then you must provide a valid ivory registration number or ivory exemption certificate number. If you are making CITES applications of any kind for taxidermy, you will need to provide the following: acquisition details, date and cause of death and location if you're applying for a road casualty. A completed official APHA declaration of gifting form if you have received a taxidermy specimen as a gift. A copy of your taxidermist logbook for the specimen you are applying for. And if you have inherited a taxidermy specimen, you will need to provide the date you acquired it, the circa date of the specimen, and any receipts or gifting letters. Again, if you are making applications for taxidermy specimens, you need to provide clear colour photographs and a detailed description of the specimen. If applying for a deconstructed taxidermy specimen, you will need to provide clear colour photographs of before, during and after the deconstruction process, showing as much as possible that it's the same item. Finally, some things to remember about the documentary evidence you need to provide if you are submitting applications for Vicuna, whole reptile skins or caviar. If making Vicuna applications, you must provide photographs of the Vicuna labels with every application, which should state the country of origin and the country of manufacture for the specimens applied for. If applying for reptile skins, you must provide whole skin tag numbers. If you are making caviar applications, you must provide Caviar label numbers, and the Caviar must be labelled in line with CITES specifications. Once you have gathered all your documentary evidence in support of your CITES application, you are ready to start making your CITES application. So how do you submit this information? The Upload Supporting Document page in the CITES digital service will prompt you to upload any relevant documents in support of your application. To upload a document, click Choose File, choosing the correct document from where it is saved on your computer, and then click Upload File. Once uploaded, the file will appear in your Files You Have Uploaded list. For this video, you will see we have uploaded a PDF of a French re-export permit. Once you have finished uploading your supporting documents, click Save and Continue. The CITES digital service also invites you to enter any additional information that may support your application. Once you have entered any additional information, click Save and Continue to move on to the next page. That is the end of this CITES online documentary evidence video. We hope it's been helpful. To finish, we'd like to recap a few key points about providing documentary evidence in support of your CITES applications. Remember, your CITES application will be processed more efficiently if you provide documentary evidence up front and at the same time as you submit your online application. The documentary evidence you provide must be relevant to the application you have submitted, and it must satisfy the CITES regulations. Providing documentary evidence with your application does not guarantee APHA will issue a CITES permit or certificate. But not providing the required documentary evidence means your application will be refused, as you have not provided the information the CITES team need to make sure your application satisfies the CITES regulations. Uploading supporting documentation when making your CITES applications using the CITES digital service is easy. For guidance on using the CITES digital service to make an application, please watch our videos on starting your CITES application, CITES import permit applications, CITES export or re-export permit applications, CITES Article 10 certificate applications, and CITES live plant imports, depending on the type of application you wish to make. Thank you.